Good evening, everyone. The Nonviolent Communication Trust in India welcomes you to this very special evening of remembrance. At NVCT Trust in India, we hold empathy circles every month called the Circle of Life. We get together to address topics of concern in society, how what's happening in the world is impacting us, and we use the NVC framework for these circles. Today, on 7th February, is Marshall's 11th death anniversary, and we want to dedicate the circle of remembering to him. For this, we have invited some NVC trainers who knew him, who have worked with him, and are carrying his work forward in the world. And we, the NVC community gathered here, we want to really get to know Marshall, the man behind the legend. And we invite them to share some personal anecdotes that would help us get to know the person that he was, as a friend, as a co-worker, as a leader, how he started this process and how it developed, and even how he grew with it. So we welcome you to this evening called See Me Beautiful, Remembering Marshall. And I would like to pass it on to Purva now, who will introduce the format to us for this evening. Thank you. Purva?
Thank you. So we will have a short check-in, followed by a short sketch of Marshall. Next, we will ask and invite the guest speakers to share stories, personal stories that they have about Marshall. Thereafter, we will open space for some questions where we participants can ask the guest speakers. So this is going to be the format.
Thank you, Purva. We also wanted to share something about Marshall as to just give a taste of who Marshall was and what his life was about. And then, again, we have with us, a set of speakers who have, met him and interacted with him and worked with him, who have lived experience. And between this group of people who've been touched by Marshall personally and the internet and, all the information out there, we were sort of wondering as to, what we could share to just give a taste. Something that we could perhaps capture some essence of what Marshall is. And here's an attempt to do just that. I'm going to be sharing my screen with a presentation. Marshall Rosenberg was born on the 6th of October in 1934 in Canton, Ohio, United States of America. He's been described as a tall, gaunt, and a soft-spoken man. According to his biographer, Marshall Reddy, he has a fierce face, even when he smiles and laughs. The overall impression I received was of intellectual and emotional intensity. He possesses a charismatic presence. The young Marshall learned about violence at a relatively young age of 9. Growing up in Detroit of the 30s and the 40s, he witnessed some of the worst race riots, while also being beaten up by his schoolmates for being a Jew. Something he says about that experience was that his life was hell for the years he lived there. Incidentally, at the same time, Marshall was also learning about compassion at home. He spoke of his family as a model of compassion, of his uncle, who would come every day to care for his grandmother, who was sick with ALS. Eventually, as an adult, Marshall, before that, something that he did as an adult was reach out to his uncle who was almost on his deathbed. He wanted to know from him how he was such a powerful source of love. When he asked him that, his uncle said that he had some very good teachers. The best of all his teachers was my grandmother, the woman that his uncle had taken care of, who was his mother-in-law, not his mother. As Marshall established himself as a psychologist, over time he gave up his flourishing career and embarked on a journey to share NVC. It was a journey which for Marshall took him from riches to rags. Marshall says of this that I knew that I wanted to be involved in this healing process, something that he was interested in from way back in his childhood. The process that he would develop, nonviolent communication, took him several years and several attempts before it got to what it is today. A commonly known fact was in the early days, to get around the United States, Marshall would drive in his car, and much of the time he would sleep outdoors. One time, he was even stopped by the police and searched, and he says that it did not bother him. He was driven by this call. That call had been the best thing in my life, he says. To this moment, I'm not too sure where it will lead, and at times I doubt whether it was ever there. But it doesn't usually take long before something happens to bring me back to it. Marshall traversed the globe following his calling, traveling from city to city, from country to country, talking about the NVC model and sharing it, and training others to share it as well. He shared NVC with his music, with his giraffe hats and his puppets. He shared it with his spirit of play and with his trademark humor. And towards the later years of his life, Marshall spoke about what NVC was really to him. And I would like to read this bit out. I'm wanting people to get away from thinking of the model as communication skills, because there are ways that the model can be of great value to us in being that dance that do not involve saying anything. There's a dance which possibly goes on in the universe between people, and it can never be done with just one person. It takes energy to be there, and it takes people to know how to connect with it. So what Marshall Rosenberg has done, given his thuggish mentality, is to try to figure out how you could teach a thug to connect with this wondrous energy. So yes, I'm very proud of my contribution. I found a way that works for some people. But the real inevitability is not the skills, of course, but that there seems to be a way for many people, thank goodness, and it's really exciting, of connecting with that other power. To use the jargon of my friends out on the West Coast, of creating heaven on earth. The idea is that you are living your compassion right now. Marshall Rosenberg passed away on this day 11 years ago.
This is what the children at home are saying to you when they say no. This is what the other person is saying to you. This is what they're singing when they say, the problem with you is, if you have giraffe ears on, here's what you hear going on inside that person. They're singing this song. See me beautiful, look for the best in me. That's what I really am, and all I want to be. It may take some time, it may be hard to find, but see me beautiful. See me beautiful each and every day. Could you take a chance? Could you find a way to see me shining through in everything I do, and see me beautiful?
We hand over to Sudha to introduce our speakers.
Yes. I'm going to call upon the speakers who have so unstintingly and without any hesitation agreed to speak to us at very short notice. I'll begin with Father Chris, as he's known to us. Chris has been a guiding light for the NVC community in India and a guiding presence for the NVC Trust. He pulls us by our ears when he thinks that we need to be pulled by our ears, and he's a pillar of support and encouragement. Chris met Marshall in 1996 and was certified in 2000, and was instrumental in bringing Marshall to India by organizing 2 IITs here in 2004 and 2006. Chris is an assessor with CNBC, guiding and accompanying candidates from different countries of the region. Thank you, Chris, for being here.
Thank you, Sudha.
Our next speaker is Alan Rolfs. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yeah. I'm so glad to see you here. A big cheer from my heart. Although Alan was certified in 1990, Alan's association with Marshall began almost 2 decades earlier, in 1972, even before Marshall called nonviolent communication. Fancy that. The transformation he experienced in his first workshop, in his own words, was incredibly freeing. And to quote him, "Thus began for me a 5-decade-long practice of learning and passing along what I had come to. Since, I've still not found anything as transformative as what I've learned from Marshall." Welcome, Alan.
I'm delighted to be here.
Tove Widstrand. Tove has been studying with Marshall since 1987. She devoted her professional life to sharing NVC and support the growth of CNBC. Over the decades, Tove has assisted Marshall as a trainer in many IITs. She served 2 terms as a board member of CNBC and as international project coordinator. Tove has been an assessor since the certification process began, and only recently in 2024 did she give up this role. Tove, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Marianne Goertlin, certified in 1989, Marianne was part of initiating the NVC in Education Europe project in 2010 to support shared learning within the NVC network and to inspire school development grounded in NVC values. In her words, sharing NVC with people who are role models for the younger generation, connects me with hope, community, joy, and meaningful contribution. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank you so much.
Sylvia Haskowitz. Certified in 1989, Sylvia serves as the CNVC as an assessor, advocate, and accompanier to support the next generation of certified trainers and is the co-founder of CAF, Candidates Active Learning Forum. And also to add, did you know that CAF is a baby giraffe? Author, director and producer of a radio program, television host, Enneagram enthusiast, Sylvia imbues her several areas of interest with NVC. The other speaker that we have here today is Farah Kalia, certified trainer since 2009. Farah came across NVC a decade earlier in 1999. She has had the unique opportunity of being the interpreter for Marshall in several of his trainings, including at IITs. She has served on the board of CNVC and is currently on the ACC, or the Assessors Coordinating Circle of CNVC. Welcome.
I'm delighted. Thank you. What an honor.
We have two other trainers who were not able to be here physically, but they've sent in their messages, and I would like to read out a bit about them. Mary McKinsey, certified trainer since 2003. Mary, who is currently a member of the CNVC board, is an author and trained mediator. Hers is a familiar name to all of us who have been associated with the NVC Academy, which she co-founded in 2005. She actually pioneered the idea of online training long before it became common, especially during and after COVID. Kirsten Christensen, certified in 2003, Kirsten's NVC journey began in 1999. She has been a member of the board of CNVC and is passionate about the spread of NVC, including in Asia and in Africa, where areas in which she is actively involved in the spread of NVC. So welcome, all of you, and over to Biraj.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudha. And a warm welcome to all our speakers. And how I had visualized this is a circle of people, all of us sitting around a bonfire, maybe having these little remembrances and weaving some memories together and sharing anecdotes. So let's visualize that and let's imagine there's a bonfire, and I will just sort of ask you some questions and we will do a round of sharing on the various, how we want to know about the man, his work, the legend, the peacemaker. So thank you all for being here. And the first round is unforgettable moments. So how we want you to share is away from work. What was he like? Shared moments maybe at meal times, while traveling, sitting around a bonfire, singing songs. Just the man as a person, maybe his quirks, his mannerisms, favorite words, phrases. What was he like? To help us to get to know the man that you knew. So for this first round, I'm just going to go around as I see people on the screen. So Chris, would you go first?
Okay.
And Alan, I'll call on you next.
Marshall for me is a person easy to communicate with, easy to talk to, and you feel quite at ease in his presence. And I think I was taking him around in Sri Lanka. And I think I remember the first time that he was in the car, and then he looked up and looked out and saw an elephant right next to him being carried in a truck. And he was really just like a kid, his responses are very spontaneous, and there is some kind of that innocence, that simplicity, which really I liked very much. Yeah. Pass it on to someone.
Yes, a simple man. And I believe he was very minimalist in his later years. Alan and then Toy.
I was the one who put in the chat that Marshall was a friend, because that's how I thought of him. And what Chris said, I would have also said that he was very personal. It's in addition to what Chris said. I was thinking that when you played the song "See Me as Beautiful," that my first workshop with Marshall was in 1973, 52 years ago now. And in that workshop, Ruth Biebermeyer was his partner. And why? Because she sang and she played songs. And why was that? Well, because Marshall later told the story that when he was young, and somebody else may remember this story better than I do. At some point, he was singing in a choir or in a music class in school, and the teacher told him to please just mouth the words because his voice was so awful. So that's why he had Ruth as a partner, because she composed songs and sang songs, and he would turn to her during the workshop and have her sing. And it was only later that he himself started to liberate himself from his own judgments and began singing. I remember the first time that I heard him sing, and it was kind of monotone. So that was a development of him as a singer as well as a musician, because he didn't play the guitar. He taught himself to play guitar. So that's an early memory of mine. But I'll say just one more before passing it along. So I got to know him personally. Oh, time's up. Okay,
No, that's all right.
I will pass him.
I think we can use a little bit of time from Chris. Chris was very brief, so.
Chris, see what you did? You gave me more time. Just a little bit there. So I grew up a baseball fan in the United States, and so did Marshall. But he was with the Detroit Tigers, and I was with the Chicago. And Marshall played baseball when he was growing up. In fact, it wasn't until he was in high school and had a collision playing baseball in the outfield and had a concussion that he decided not to pursue a career in baseball.
Oh.
So when I would get together with him, we would play catch and we would hit fly balls to each other. And when I went to Texas to visit him at his home, that's one of the first things we would do is go to the baseball field and hit fly balls. And when he would come to Chicago, that's the first thing we would do is go to the park 2 blocks away from my apartment and hit fly balls. So that's something that people don't know, but that's my experience with him. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that. Toy and then Marianne.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm thinking about the qualities that I experienced around him when I was working with him, and as Chris said, how easy he was to be around, and also flexible in many ways. And as somebody mentioned, also simple habits, but very flexible. And sometimes I was even missing that he was not expressing his needs. I had to find out myself what it was he wanted. And I wish he had been more clear about what he wanted coming here to Sweden. But I'm also very aware of this accepting presence that was radiating from him, and how easy it was for him to connect with any kind of people, and how he was demonstrating an incredible acceptance and patience with people when we were struggling to get his work manifested the way that he wanted us to do it. And I want to share one example that just came up to me. We had the first more intensive training I organized for him in Sweden. It was a 5-day training, and we had hired a children's camp, and it was a couple of hours drive from Stockholm. And on the way up, we stayed for lunch, and we stayed at a very simple road restaurant, and there was a lot of free space in that room, and there were various groups of people having their lunch there. And we had a couple of tables that we were sitting at, and suddenly there was okay. So how do we do it now?
So just complete your sentence.
Okay, I will complete it. And there was a toddler, a little boy, probably about 3 years old or something. And suddenly he walked across this restaurant room, right across up to Marshall, and wrapped his arms around Marshall's leg and put his chin down to Marshall's thigh, is what you say. And the two of them just connected with their eyes, and it was kind of silence almost in the room to see what happened with this little boy. And then he let go and went back to his mom.
Something about his energy.
Yeah, there was something very extraordinary around his energy. Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm ready to move. Marianne.
I'll pass it to Marianne and then Sylvia. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, my days with Marshall was for the most that I was in IITs together with him, first for my learning and then to assist as a trainer. And it was quite many days and many meals we shared together. And I agree to what you already heard, that it was easy. And in the beginning, when I got to know him, I carried such a huge respect for this man. And now I was sitting beside him, and it was so easy just to be me, so full of acceptance and treating me like, as an equal. And it really made me relax. And it was wonderful to be with him. And I remember many times it was also quiet. It was no small talk. And what was inspiring to me with him, that he always came with, he was reading and writing and creative in this development whatsoever with words. He came, I read this book, and he was quoting, he translated a prayer into NVC. He shared all what he discovered with us. And for me, that was a huge example of a teacher in process and progress. And that it really stayed with me as a huge inspiration, not to come with something that is static. This is really something that moves all the time. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Sylvia?
Wow, so many stories. I don't know which to tell. But what you just reminded me of, Marianne, is I remember him saying oftentimes, as of my shower this morning, or as of my shaving this morning, and then he'd come up with a new idea. So I wanted to connect also with, I remember it wasn't just with humans, it was with dogs. He really loved animals. And I used to be a dog sitter. So I would organize for Marshall when he came to the San Francisco Bay Area, oftentimes. And he would stay with me in my house sitting jobs. And so there was a couple of dogs there. And I remember we'd get back from a workshop and I'd have the dogs sit and then they'd get a treat. So he would sit and put his hands up like this and ask for a treat like a dog. So he had just a really fun, playful sense. And sometimes it was we were between partners and we would we would hang out together almost like girlfriends. We'd talk about like our perspective or people that we were interested in. And it was just a really fun connection. And like others have said, very easy, but also just very sweet and very fun. And then I remember once Gloria, his past wife, he would say they were sitting in the back seat as I was driving them to a workshop, and they'd be bickering, they'd be talking to each other in ways that I didn't understand, or they weren't familiar to me with what he was teaching. And I said, "Hey guys, where's the NVC?" And they would just giggle and laugh. So we had a lot of moments together in hot tubs and other places that just a lot of fun and a lot of lightness. And I remember once at my house, I made him breakfast, and he came with a little tiny giraffe and just put it on my plate. A little, I guess it was like a sewn giraffe that he put on my plate. So he would gift in sort of sweet little ways like that. There was always some kind of lightness and humor and fun.
Oh, that sounds so wonderful. These little gifts from Marshall.
Mhm.
Farah?
Oh, every, everything you were sharing kind of resonated for me. I knew Marshall as from 2003, so that was later, and I was there next to him as a translator interpreter most of the time. So we kind of, what I really liked is that he was determined in sharing the same stories over and over and over again, because at first I thought the stories, it made life easier for him, you know, not to have to change stories. But then I really noticed that these stories were so illustrating. He was trying to make a point, and I I just was delighted to hear these stories. And since I were interpreting them, it was so easy because I knew what was coming. And so just I remember a little time when he was telling the story and I was telling the story as well in French for, I don't know, maybe the 10th time. And I finished talking as his translator, and then he continued, and actually I had finished the story before he had finished his story, so we kind of had a sorry, yeah, these things happen, you know. And so I really enjoyed the lightness around this work that is, you know, kind of hard for the brain sometimes, and really needing to stay there. It's a kind of a deep empathic presence, staying with people when they translate, and it was such fun being next to him. I just could translate for hours and hours on end. It would. So this was the kind of lightness that working with him was such yeah, such a.
Were you complete, Farah?
I am.
Okay, so just in time. Yeah. Yeah, it's so wonderful to hear these stories of fun and play and joy. And I think he was just a very good friend as well, from what I hear. And so easy to work with. And that brings us to the next, and what kind of a person he was to work with. And you've all worked closely with him, collaborating, planning, just wanting to know that along with the admiration and inspiration was and being easy, was it also maybe frustrating or something difficult? Just wanting to get some insights. And before I call on all of you who are present here to share, we'd like to hear an anecdote sent by Kirsten. And Sudha, would you just read it out? And then we can come back to the panel.
Sure. Kirsten says, I had organized several workshops, lectures of 3 hours in different cities. One of them focused on anger transformation. I'd been outside in the hall talking with a participant and came into the group 10 to 15 minutes late. I sat there listening and getting more and more nervous because I could not hear Marshall giving the participants what I had promised in the marketing of the workshop. So in the break, I gathered my courage and went up to him to ask about this. He listened, and I saw a flash of anger/red move over his face. Then he took a breath and responded. Then I need to hear more about what you're missing because I thought this was exactly what I was presenting. With a bit of shame, I responded, well, I came in late, so I did not hear the beginning of your workshop. And we both loosened up and agreed that he will make the anger part more clear in the second half. I remember the situation as an example of Marshall's ability to contain his own reaction and take his time to respond from the energy of his choosing.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudha. What a wonderful example of him being triggered and then responding after a quick check-in and self-connection, and which is what he's always trying to teach us as. So, yeah, so this time maybe we can begin with Alan. Would you like to say something about what it was like? And then we'll go to Marianne.
I don't think I have much to say on this of what it was like to work with him is what the question was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he was the presenter, and the times that I had to work with him in which he shared the stage were, for me, was when he would do role plays and would, in the workshops that I would be with him, and ask me to play the role of the empathizer. And that I enjoyed doing, and that was my forte anyhow. So that was an easy thing for me to do with him, and he would use me in that regard. But otherwise, I mean, there are other very poignant moments that I can remember of what I learned from him. But this question stumped me a little bit because it wasn't one in which it was working with him. It was really one of his having the full stage in the presentations that he would do.
Yeah. What about his organizational skills and things like that? Did he have?
Oh, organizational skills. Now that's a different thing. He had no organizational skills. I mean, that's an oxymoron with Marshall. Except I can remember his attempting to have organizational skills. He would carry around in his briefcase names of everyone who wanted to be on his mailing list. And once I went to his house in Sherman, Texas, because I sometimes went there for my own vacation when he was free during the summertime. And I can say this to just complete this. Yeah. And we went to a computer store. This was in the early days of computers, before there was even Apple, because he wanted to ask the computer person whether there was a way that the computer could help him organize the names, because he literally had names of everyone on scraps of paper strewn around his briefcase. So that was his first attempt to really get organized. So that's my answer regarding the organizational question. He was helpless in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Marianne? And then maybe Sylvia.
I will not talk about organizational, more to the working with him, because again, I was in the IITs and it was easy. And it was easy because it was so clear what he was doing and what the trainers were asked to do, so to say. So it was really not planning together. So he had his way of doing, and he was totally in trust and open for us to do our contributions, and there was no question about that. So for me, it was easy and creative to be working more beside him, that because we didn't plan together, but it was together, so to say. So that's what I can say about working together, easy and in trust. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Sylvia?
A few things. So he used to keep a notebook. I remember, like he'd keep during the workshop, he would take little notes of things that people asked. So that was the organization piece I saw. I remember he really hated when people were supposed to pick him up at a certain time or place, and either they got lost or they didn't show up on time. He got very upset about that. That did not work for him. He liked to be at a workshop like a half an hour before at least to have time to relax and sit down. And so those are the times that I kind of saw him agitated. I would say the working together, one of the things that was upsetting for us, for people that when we'd organize in our communities, was that we would say we want you to market or at least let people know or let us have a moment to speak about our stuff. And I didn't notice much space or time for him allowing that to happen. So I'm not sure what that was about for him. Maybe he didn't trust people so much to do the work that he was doing. I'm not quite sure. But one time I do remember the last IIT I was with him. It was a workshop in North Carolina, and there was a woman who was kind of losing connection with herself. So we all went into the bathroom, all the trainers went into the bathroom in this workshop, trying to figure out what do we do with this woman? Like, how do we? So it was actually like it felt like really working together. Let's talk about it. And so there was three women, and we ended up walking the woman back to her bunk and singing to her and kind of bringing her back into herself. And then we called her husband. But it was really, we were all at a loss and we all decided together. And that was the most teamwork as far as a working together that I remember.
Yeah, that's a lovely story. Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. We'll have it Farah and then Chris. So Farah, would you go first?
Yeah, what comes up for me is the term I heard for the first time, the word he pronounced for the first time, that for me was the word chaotic. So how to get organized from chaos, basically, something like that. And that was really new for me. And I can't remember whether it followed an experience or it was previous to an experience, but I did experience a workshop where it was total chaos because everybody started to raise their hands and talk and starting to discuss. And actually, he just did nothing. He just sat there and was like, nodding and nodding and nodding. And like, I don't know, 40 minutes later, it was impossible to translate anyway. So I kind of quit at one point, and I was really wondering what the hell was going on. And so I was with my own judgments, this is such a bad organization. This it's not, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's crazy. And so after some time, I think somebody screamed loud or went out of the room, and that left a kind of a total silence. And he just said something like, "Are you enjoying this conversation? Did you enjoy what happened?" And my heart was bouncing, but and I had to translate this. You enjoy what happens, and so basically, it turned out that we all had a lesson from this session. Some people were really angry and mad, full of judgments, and some others kind of learned that we are all kind of responsible for what's going on. That you don't have to depend on one person because they are the leader of the workshop to do things. So this was my learning. And the learning from, we organize ourselves from chaos. Sometimes we learn things. This is what I learned.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that would be quite anxiety inducing. Yes. Chris and then
Yeah.
Toy.
So I think I saw Marshall sort of living what he's preached, in the sense of, he said, work is always a play for him. And I personally, watching him, he really enjoyed, he was in his elements only when he really started doing this work, and he doesn't get upset in that sense. I don't know, at least for me, he didn't. He took them, he was quite relaxed in that sense when he's really doing a workshop. He's same stories again, but for me, it always had a lot of meaning for me. And even he called, I think, 4 of us to come for, he wanted to certify us, I suppose. Anyway, he called us in Switzerland, and there was one from Africa, one from New York, and the other one was Carsten and myself, 4 of us. And we had a really nice time. Actually, there was no workshops at all. It was just walking in the woods and just having a great time, wonderful time. And then at the end of a few days, I think he said that he sort of all of you are certified, as trainers. So it was, and I think he has some sort of insight into people also. I think he knew people when they really understood what they're talking about. Thank you.
He was able to understand and really follow, and actually a lot of empathy there, and he can connect with people easily as well. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that sharing. And that's also how we learn NVC not by the book, is what our next question would be. But Toe, is something that you would like to say, or how it was working with him?
I can add a couple of things here. He had a strong need of being alone from time to time. He could withdraw and just sit at the computer and maybe play computer games, or he had crosswords. He had a magazine where he did crosswords. And he was also very social. He was willing to follow various social events, but at the same time, he was also careful with his own private time. So that's something that I was paying attention to. I remember one New Year we were in Switzerland and a group, and he just didn't come for the celebration 12 o'clock at New Year's Eve. He just wanted to be on his own there. He loved nature. He got a lot of energy out of nature. He often went out for a walk or sat looking at some trees or a flower before a workshop started. It gave him energy, and he could use that as metaphors in his trainings. I also noticed, because I was worried about him over the years, that he was traveling so much, he was sitting so much, but after all, he did take care of his health fairly well. He walked a lot when he was in Switzerland over the years. I did another note here. He was quite unpredictable. You really didn't know what to expect from him. There was a big event here in Stockholm, and this is one of the first years, and I didn't know him that well. And I had escorted him to come to this, and he was going to do a presentation. It was several hundred people. Yeah. Okay, I just want to share this last piece.
Yeah.
I kind of followed him up towards the stage, and he turned around to me and he looked at me and he said, "And I have no idea what I'm going to say." And then he turned around and went up on the stage and left me there with my panic. So that's it for now.
Yeah. So I'm hearing there was a lot of ease and at the same time very unpredictable, and he did cause a lot of anxiety for people who were working with him because they weren't sure of what was going to happen or what he was doing. Quite colorful, actually.
Hmm.
So yeah, and we're calling our next round Not by the Book. So NVC is all about living it. And there's a lot of learning away from the book and from teaching just by being with him. And some of you have already addressed that. And just learning by watching him. And here again, I'd like to get the sharing from Mary. And she sent us a little video and to play that. So maybe we can have that now.
Joy for me to be. Hi, Sudha and friends. It's such a joy for me to be asked to talk to you about some of my experiences with Marshall. And I've had so much fun the last couple of days just thinking about him and thinking about what my experiences were. And so one thing in particular comes to mind, and it was initially when I very first met Marshall and went to one of his trainings, I actually didn't walk away feeling very good about nonviolent communication. I had just myself learned that I could be angry, and I was so much enjoying just expressing wherever I could go, just letting everybody know that I was mad. And so when Marshall started talking about using a formula, I thought that would be too much. And if I'm honest, I would say I thought it was a flaw in his program. But much later, I realized, of course, the flaw was in me, not in Marshall, and certainly not in nonviolent communication, but I just wasn't ready for it. So then several years went by. I did some work with several local trainers and a ton of work with Marshall because I was so blessed. He came to my community several times a year, every year for years. And so all kinds of workshops were available to me with Marshall Rosenberg. And I didn't know at the time how amazing that was. I mean, how really amazing it was to spend so much time with the founder of the process. And besides his amazing way of expressing NVC and sharing it in groups and his own unique kind of charisma that he brought to it, he was so clear. And what he said would just go into me in a way that was way beyond intellect. It just went in and stayed there, and I would chew on things and just kind of kept growing and growing. And then something happened. Then maybe several years into studying NVC, I started to think maybe it's not really for me, because I started to understand this concept of transparency and authenticity in a way I couldn't even fathom. It was far too scary for me to think about being that authentic or that transparent. And I really thought it was dangerous, actually, to be that authentic. Like I would be putting myself in danger if I did that. So I was talking to a friend about it, and she said, when you go to your IIT in International Intensive Training, you should ask for a one-on-one session with Marshall. Now, in today's world, I think that is amazing, don't you think? That Marshall was doing individual one-on-one sessions with participants at his IITs. I mean, it blows my mind today. Anyways, he was doing them, and he gave me an hour of his time. And so I came in all prepared. I was prepared, and I had a scenario to tell him. And I was certain that when I told him my story, that he would agree with me and change his process. I mean, this is embarrassing to say this, but honestly, this is where I was. And so I said, okay, Marshall, what if I asked you out? And I said, Marshall, I would like to go out with you. And if I'm really honest, what I'm looking for is a permanent partner. I'd like to have a couple of kids, and I'd like to move to California. What do you think? Would you be up for that? And I was certain, like I said, that he would agree with me that that's preposterous. But no, he didn't think it was preposterous. He said, "Oh, Mary, I would love that. I would love to be asked out like that, wouldn't you?" And I said, "No, I'd be horrified if I was asked out like that." And he said, "Oh, no, you're missing the point." And then I don't know what happened, but I spent an hour with Marshall. And by the time we were done, I was completely hooked. I was willing to upend my entire life and start to live more authentically, more transparently, to work through all my pain around this and all my really deep-rooted fears around it, and to be completely committed to nonviolent communication. And I have remained there ever since, from this one-hour session with Marshall Rosenberg. Everything in my life changed. Every relationship changed. Everything was improved because of my NVC work. Now, since then, of course, I've seen Marshall in all kinds of different ways, but I really want to talk about his generosity. So one of the ways that I saw him time and time and time again express generosity is how I'd watch him in a group and he would just be all animated and full of life and, having fun and really enjoying his students. And then 10 minutes later, I'd get him in the car to drive him to the airport, and he would collapse in what was almost like, it seemed to me like desperate tiredness. Desperate tiredness. And I was both amazed by that and also sad. Amazed because I could see so clearly how much he loved his work and how much he loved bringing NVC to the world, and how, in fact, it actually supported him and nurtured him while he was doing it. And then sad because I could see the crash afterwards and how it affected his life so much, his body and his physical health so much. Such a quandary and such sort of extremes. But Marshall expressed his generosity in many, many ways beyond that. And so I can honestly say that my life has been completely changed by meeting this man, Marshall Rosenberg, by having the pleasure and joy to work with him and many trainers from around the world. And Marshall, I wish you peace and rest and joy and satisfaction, knowing that you have changed so many thousands and thousands of lives across the world. Thanks, Sudha, for asking me for this.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? Yeah. We wish him well wherever he is. I'm sure sitting with a guitar somewhere and singing See Me Beautiful. So anybody else here who would like to say something about not by the book? Is there anybody who's called to share something here? Any one of you?
So honestly, I didn't understand your question. Where are we? Which question are you covering?
Not by the book. Learning NVC by just being around Marshall.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
I want to say something.
Yes.
Because what I remember most is the moments where I learned a lot, of course, in his presence, but he was so open to share also. Since I worked a lot with children, and he was supporting me when I started the school here in Stockholm, and we talked a lot about parenting and the relationship with children. And then he said he often said with humor that go directly to grandchildren, jump your own children because it's too hard. communication with your own children, and that was his joke. But then what still in me, what helped me, was that he said that he also had challenges with his own children when he lost his temper and he was kind of screaming and whatever it was, his expression, I don't know, because I was not there, but he expressed that. And then I remember he shared that when he sat down, because he was often saying he was sitting down with what has happened to learn from situation. And then he said that he could see the pattern that when he had those kind of interactions with his own children, it was always that he needed understanding himself.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of understanding for self was coming out like that. And it stayed with me so many times. And when I have shared with people also that it's so simple to understand, but in the moment to remind, okay, understanding, and not to expect understanding from the young ones, but find other ways to feed the understanding for us adults. I wanted to share that because it was really meaningful for me to share this.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Marianne.
You know, I have one also. I remember I would say to Marshall, because I was always really curious to know about people's life. So I would ask him questions. And I said, Marshall, I'm always asking you questions about your life. How come you never ask me any questions about mine? And he said, well, that's a really interesting question. He said, I learned from my father that it's inappropriate or it's not really wanted for people to be asked questions. That if they really want to share something, they'll share what they want to share. And it just really gave me pause. Like, what is my need behind asking the questions? And am I open to just letting people share their information? There was another time I learned about the reward and punishment. As I said before, he was very interested in animals, and I had a dog at the time named Zara. And to get her into the car, because she didn't like getting in the car, I would use a biscuit, a little doggy treat. And I'd say, Zara, can you jump in? And he was, what are you doing here? He said to me, what is this about? You need to get the dog into the car with a biscuit, with a treat? So I said, okay, idiot, then you show me what you would do. We had a kind of a playful relationship. So he brings out the little puppet that I showed you, that I told you that he showed me or gave to me. And he goes, Zara, look at the puppet. And Zara jumped right in. And I said, oh my God. So these are sort of the subtle ways that he shared his NVC with me and concepts and the way he lived them. One other time I wanted to share, because Tova had said too, sometimes he didn't express his needs. So I really was maybe a teacher for him a bit, because everybody said he was so tired. Like Mary had said, he was exhausted. They said, when he comes to see you in San Francisco, take him to, the gym, get him out and get him to exercise and get him a massage. So I said, Marshall, I'd like to bring you to the gym. And he didn't really respond much. And so later I said, everybody wanted, me to take you to the gym or take you somewhere. And so he said, but I wanted you to come with me. And I said, well, why didn't you ask? If I would have known that, I would have been happy to do that.
Yeah. So in spite of all that, he found it difficult to really express himself and to express his needs. So interesting.
I think some time to ask for what he wanted. Yeah.
And I also heard you say earlier, Sylvia, about him bickering and not being in. So our next segment is called Not NVC. So I would really want to hear from, and I think Marianne also said that. So when was he not in this NVC energy? Yeah, and so
I wanted
you wanted
I wanted to I became aware, this may or may not be in relation to this question. I've become aware, just in going around here and with this last question, that I didn't learn that much from Marshall in his workshops. I mean, I did, like everybody else, but I really realized that I knew him and considered him to be a friend, which I had said earlier, so that the stories that I have are from my interactions with him. And all the time that I spent much, much more time with him outside of workshops than ever in workshops. I invited him to stand up with me when I got married, uh, for example, and knew Gloria, and I met his first wife, Vivian, and I knew Gloria well, and I met Valentina. Uh, so what I really learned from him was just his being as a friend. Uh, And one thing that is the most powerful for me in that is that I thought I could talk to him about anything. So that the most difficult situations that I was in, I could communicate with him, and he would, and he was accepting of it. But it was more than that. He would do the same. So one little anecdote that comes to my mind is that I went to his house in Sherman, Texas, sometimes to visit him. And I remember driving there once and opening the door, going into his living room, and he and Gloria were there. And I said to him, "All right, when do you want to have a counseling session between the two of you?" And I was doing that as a joke. And both of them immediately got up, because we were always playful. That's a primary quality of being with Marshall, is playing. So that was my first words, opening the screen door and walking in. "When do you want to have a counseling session?" And they both got up and went to their offices and came back with their schedules. And we scheduled a time. Because I was a therapist too. So and sure enough, a day later, there was a session that I had with him.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Toy, you had something to say? You wanted to say something?
I don't know which question we are talking about now. Are we on the moments when he wasn't living his own process?
Yes, we're now at that, not living
Okay.
his process. Yeah.
Well, since I was on the board and also was present at quite some big gatherings, I did see a couple of times when things didn't go the way he wanted. And then he could become extremely persistent. He just said, "No, I'm not going for this now." And no matter what the plan said, what the arrangements were, he wouldn't go for it. And we just had to cope with it somehow. It didn't happen often, but a couple of times it did. And there was also I know there were a couple of very unpleasant board meetings when the jackals came out. And they were quite vicious when they came out. But he also recovered very quickly. That is something that I really remember about him, that I could be in a mood very affected by what had happened, and even next day I would have it still quite alive in me. And then I would meet him in the morning, and he's completely back again in his power. So he had that ability to shift quickly and get rid of what had happened previous sessions or hours or days. And I also really liked how I learned from him that mistakes are learning experiences, learning what did you learn, and not kind of dig yourself into the hole. More look at what went wrong, what will you do different next time.
Yeah.
In my experience, I think Marshall was very uncomfortable in meetings because he sort of is a little fidgety. He really didn't like spending time with meetings. And some of the meetings, board meetings and all, were very painful for him. It was difficult for him. But as Tove said, of course, he gets over it like the children already.
Yeah, and I think that is what Kristen said in her message as well, that she saw a flash of anger, but then he just was able to take a breath and be back to just being totally connected. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the art, to be able to connect with oneself and come back to our groundedness. And
I have one memory of when Tove arranged the first IIT in Sweden, here in Stockholm, and I was a participant, so I was new. And there was, I'm guessing that Marshall was frustrated, and the rest I don't know because it's him. But there was a tension for me in what I saw because there was a woman participant, and she was not happy with what happened at the IIT. She was not pleased. And I don't remember. It was about the content, the schedule, whatever. And she was speaking in very complaining terms. And Marshall listened. And then after some time, she said, I don't hear a request from you. And then she was like, she didn't understand. And then she continued to complain. And Marshall said, I don't hear a request. And I was thinking, what is he doing? And it kept going. She started to speak, and he said, I don't hear a request. And this kept going. And I was new, I was thinking, what's going on here? And then I don't know how it happened, but someone suggested, I don't know if it was you, Tove, that some would help her to come up with a group that she could get help to find a request. So she was out because she said, really, if this is not changing, I will leave this IIT. And she was from the US, so it was quite a big thought. I will leave this IIT if you don't change it. That was also the message. And she went out, she got some support and come back with a request. And it ended up that she stayed. But the learning part was this, when he really asked for some concrete request. And I was so new to this, so I didn't really catch it. But I remember the excitement of this and also how it unfolded.
thank you. Thank you for that, Marianne. Do we have any more reminiscences about how he was not NVC?
I may have I could remember when he was not happy with how certified trainers were being certified in Europe somewhere. And he kind of, at a meeting, he just said, well, stop the whole thing. And everybody was like, what? I mean, we don't, not knowing how to understand it. And of course, it shook the whole community quite a bit. And I was kind of learning, how to make requests and how to say no and how to express myself. And that came the time when I learned that I better say no without expressing my needs rather than shutting my mouth and trying to make up a request that would come maybe 3 months later. So that's where I thought to myself, okay, I think I could do that, I could be inspired by just saying stop without saying anything more, and maybe think about it later. So that was my learning too. I can say no, but I could still, engage in saying no without expressing needs rather than not expressing them at all, in no way.
Thank you. We can think about it later. We can say no now. Yes, Toy.
I can add one piece that I really appreciated with him, and he could start a training and he could say, I've learned some things about communication that seem to work, and I'm sharing it the best I can with you. But that does not mean that I am completely following my own learning. So he had an humble attitude towards how difficult his own work was or is. And that made us kind of coming together, exploring what could work here.
Yeah.
And I have used that in my own trainings, and that sometimes make, depending on the setting, but it can make people a bit uncomfortable to start with. But if you can break through that, then you have a totally different atmosphere in the training. So that helped me a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for these sharings. Yeah. Yeah, it's, I think, just learning from this, it also sort of gives us some breathing space, all of us on the NVC path now, to allow ourselves some room to lose it sometimes as well. And to, it's okay, it's okay. I mean, even he was not NVC all the time. Yeah, and now I'd like to move to, maybe start with, I'd like to invite Alan to share with us something about the early years. So how was it to be with him, how he developed the skills and the method, and maybe whether you saw his ideas undergo some change over the years and how he grew. If you could just tell us that.
Yeah, there is a poignant memory that I have, but it's not for this question right here. A poignant memory that I got from learning from the workshop that I have never seen elsewhere. But for the early days, frequently it is said now that how did Marshall evolve, or that NVC has evolved? And I never saw that. What I did see was that there were what I would call elaborations, that what I got early, he would expand upon and develop more as the years went on. But I really never saw any change in NVC. What I got from the very first workshop was the same as I got in my last workshop with him. So that's something that I want to say, because that would remain throughout. Now, Marshall would change little parts of it. The third step in particular was the one that I was the most interested in, because that got called different things as the years went on. And he didn't come to the concept of needs until about 15 years after I first met him.
Okay.
So the third step went through changes. So at first and I've recorded that, and I've written about that too, because I've looked at all of his writings, and I've actually transcribed those, and I have an article regarding that. So that's the one area that I see as having changed. But it was his trying to say more deeply what the thing was that he always got. And then I have just one little anecdote regarding that third change too. I can remember going to being with him in Sherman, Texas, with Marshall and Gloria, and she would talk about how Marshall would sometimes come out from his office to Gloria, and he would say, I've got it. I've got it. I can now say what it is I've got. And it would be that he had changed something, and Gloria would talk about it and laugh about it too. He would say, it's not of, it's with. And that way, and this made all the difference in the world. And finally, he was able to say what he was really trying to say. That's one small thing that I got there. So that's my experience with Marshall, is that it did not change, it elaborated.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting because you say that it's the part that changed most was needs, and needs is what is the core that we learn about, and that is one which was transforming. It's interesting.
Yes, and I like to say all of us, Tova here knows, and Sylvia, those of us who were before needs, we all know NVC before needs. So that this understanding of needs as being central, as being so important. So I asked the question to everyone, so what is NVC if it isn't needs? That's my rhetorical question to people.
Yeah. Yes, Toy.
I noticed over the years that the importance of being able to give yourself empathy had more and more importance in his work. The first, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years was more between myself expressing and receiving the other person. But then participants more and more came back with feedbacks and said, what about me? What about my reactions when this is going on? And then he would say, well, you can take care of that later. But then it gradually became clear that he saw how important it was to the self-connection, that you can't support others if you don't are connected to yourself.
Yes.
So then he started very often with self-connection.
Yeah.
But that was not a change. That was a focus that shifted.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to add something that was a little different, but we were at a workshop. He came to Tucson, where I live, Arizona, USA, and he said, I said to him, Marshall, people are really needing to move. They're kind of tired of sitting. How would you feel if during the break I did some movement with them? And he said, I'd be okay with that, but I want you to hear how I'd like you to do that. I'd like you to say, if a body part wants to move, will you allow it to move, rather than commanding them or putting out a request of now move this, now we're going to do that. So it was still very much in alignment with the choice, and also putting out a clear request, but it wasn't a demand. It wasn't put out in that way. So I really appreciated that piece about him. And I would say the other piece I want to say is, for me, the thing that I think has gotten lost a bit that I remember him sharing was, in the slot of needs was also a way to check out your perception. So it would be, when I heard you say this, I felt upset. And I'm telling myself that you were mad at me. Is there truth to that? So it was checking out a perception. I don't hear that very much today.
No.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Sylvia. Anything to add to it? Anybody? Chris, Marianne? Would you like to add anything to how he grew and how the concept developed? If you noticed him change? Yes, Alan.
You did not show any pictures of him early. And I wish we had pictures, because his early pictures of him showed him very fierce. And people would be scared of him.
Really?
Yes, because you only show the pictures. I mean, the transformation was incredible. It was remarkable. I remember one woman in a workshop when I brought him to Changes in Chicago being angry with him in a workshop because he would do the role play, and in the role play, she accused him of getting more out of it than the other person because he would break down in tears, playing either the part of the empathizer or the other person in it. And I remember that specifically. And I think that that was true, that he changed because those first pictures have him with such piercing eyes that people would be scared of him.
Wow.
And one of the stories of him is that he grew up, he was violent. He was physically violent. He learned to fight to protect himself coming home from school. And he learned that he talked about that he learned a way to walk down the street and project fear so that no one would mess with him. And he was angry. And he had physical fights. And I remember him telling me of the last time that he had a physical fight. He said he hated it. It was so painful for him. And yet that was the only way that he knew when he was growing up to protect himself. And he was incredibly angry because his younger brother couldn't defend himself, and he was charged as the older brother for defending his younger brother. So that you can see that in the very early pictures of him, maybe even in the album cover of Where Does the Energy Come From? There's more of a fierceness in him, which softened incredibly over the years. That's one thing that I wanted to point out, that people don't know very much about him.
Yes. Yes, it's amazing to see that, because there was some mention of him, people seeing him as very fierce, but we
Yeah,
also know
yes.
him as a very compassionate and easy and caring person. So the
Yeah.
transformation did take place through his work.
Yes, yes, yeah. Uh-huh. And through, I think what I was saying was, and through his work in the workshops themselves, because he put himself out there.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, and I want to tell this one poignant story of something that I did learn from him. Can I do that now, or should I wait?
You can go ahead.
Okay. It was in an early workshop where I saw him, and I hadn't seen this since. I saw him at some point tighten, and he said something in relation to a workshop participant. He said something like this: I want you to know that I am incredibly scared right now. I am just terrified at this moment. And it would help me so much if you would simply say back to me what I just said. And the participant said something other than that. And he said, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. I just want you to know I am absolutely petrified and I am scared to talk. And it would help me so much if you would just repeat the words to me. And again, the participant did not. And he interrupted again. And he said, excuse me, I don't know how to show myself more here, but I am scared to death of hearing judgments from you, or whatever it was. It would just, and he repeated that until the participant, it was just a young man, actually said to him, so you're saying, and then repeated the very words to him. And that was a poignant learning for me.
Wow.
The poignancy of it was that it was true. He was not role playing at all. That was a moment in which he was being himself, and he was absolutely as open and transparent and incredibly vulnerable. I knew, and everybody was just absolutely silent in the room, of course, because he said those kinds of things. I am sitting here just shaking. I am terrified. And I've learned that. And I mean, I remember that. And the part two of, excuse me, I want to interrupt you because I can't hear what you're saying here until I just hear, would you please tell me?
I'm saying, wow, how powerful is that?
It was incredibly powerful for me. Thank you for
Thank you for
allowing me to
sharing
say
that.
that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, wow. Can I share?
Yes.
I'm actually really touched by, first of all, for being among us, and hearing the stories of the people who have been there when Marsha was younger, let's say. And I'm really staying with what you shared about the process. I mean, the process did, the words or the focus changed and was kind of modelized. And but I'm still staying with what is so precious to me, and what is still a challenge for me to share is the essence to which it touches. And nowadays I am with this question: had Marshall still be here, would still be among us, how would it be for us to learn NVC? Because I can't remember who shared. I think it was Alan. It's the same old song, you know. You just need to focus on the essence, and things happen. And I'm just also focused on everything that's happening today, and the discussions and everything. And we just need to get to the essence, and everything comes into place somehow. And sometimes I hear him say this in my mind, and I wish I was able to, yeah, carry that on. I think this is what is so alive with me right now. I think it's so meaningful for me right now.
Mm. Thank you for that, Vera, because also what we just did a spiritual Sunday and we showed Marshall's social change video from about 20 years ago. And it was amazingly powerful about how relevant it is today.
Uh-huh.
The same.
Currently
Yeah.
very relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming to, as we notice that the bonfire is dying out right now, and it's time for a closing. Some closing thoughts, maybe one thing from each one of you, starting with Chris. Again, going back to the order which I see you people.
Yeah, what I admire most in Marshall, his compassion and passion, really. Nonviolent communication, he really embodied it. And only one that's similar was the time that I was listening to Paulo Freire when he was talking about his work. And it's just like that. It's really totally, and I think I have doubts if I have really understood him completely, because he had this tremendous amount of passion for his work. And, you know, when he came to Sri Lanka, the first time when he came, the day that he was supposed to come, and there was a bomb blast, and I had to stop him. He could not come. And but he was going to places, very dangerous places, and he didn't care. I remember in Hungary, the last time he was supposed to go to this dangerous place, he was actually, the American government has sort of warned them not to go. And finally, we persuaded him not to go, and Ike and John went there to work with those people there. And so this courage to travel all over, because he had something and he knew what he had. And that passion and that commitment and that fearlessness.
Thank you. Fearlessness. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Alan?
Just to add to that a little bit, he went wherever he was asked, and he had no money. And that wasn't a concern of his. And he would sleep on couches and on floors wherever he went. If he was asked to come, he would go. So I want to say that. But what I want to say that is most poignant is that for me, is this thing that I think Farah is getting at. Is that Marshall sometimes in his books and elsewhere would say that he had nothing new. And I thought, well, that's bullshit. Really. That he had gathered it from everywhere else. Because he had something. He talked to us about, nobody else that I know of has ever talked about jackal, what we can't talk about, the kind of language and thinking that takes us away from what Farah was referring to as the essence. And for me, everything that Marshall did, and I didn't get this conceptually until just about 5 years ago, everything that Marshall did and all of his language pointed to this thing that happens, which he called connecting to life, which happens as soon as you begin doing NVC, as soon as you do OFNR, or as soon as you empathize. Something changes instantly within myself and with the other person that doesn't get noticed, but there is a different quality of interaction that one experiences right away. And for me, that's everything that NVC, that what Marshall was doing was pointing to.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Alan. Toy? Closing thoughts?
Well, something that remains for me I want to share is that he had strong hopes for the world. He kind of never gave up on the world. He saw that after all, how cruel and violent certain actions were, he was so convinced that we are shifting into a different awareness. And then a little piece that the way he was delivering his messages with such humor so many times. He could deliver serious messages with such humor that we could kind of receive it with some joy and irony of life. He was a master of that, and his timing was just incredible when it came to picking up stuff and use it to share very serious stuff. That's what I want to add.
Yes. Thank you. Marianne?
Yes, what can I add? I'm so inspired with every speaker. But for me, I wrote something that has made a big difference for me. And it's the same, but maybe I can add is walking his talk, or the way he presenting things without imposing and with the openness. And for me, that's the difference often with the teaching or sharing. He was also sharing, including himself. And for me, that has a huge impact, had a huge impact always. And I'm still learning on that myself. But then it helped me to make a decision for myself from what he shared, again with education, where I say that I will not use violence in the name of education. And that was clear to me from the beginning. Okay, there is another way. And I saw him doing it, and that's what I've been busy with since that first day. To make requests and not demands, to give learning free, to let people be themselves, and to connect and to communicate. So I'm very still inspired from ever the first day I kind of understood that difference. And I also want to just add one small piece, more recent, that was inspired from you, Farah, what you said with this experience of the essence when it's really present. And actually, I had quite recent this experience when I was visiting you in India, and Sudha and Trust invited the community. I felt it in the room, and I was so moved with what you are doing and how you are doing it and how you are living community, because that was really one of the strong things I always heard from it. This we do together. We are in this together. And for me, it was a great inspiration just to visit you in that. I wanted to say that. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Sylvia?
Wow, so much. I think what I really want to say just as an ending is I loved his clarity, that he could say so much in so few words. And the sayings that he brought, because those are things that really connect with me. The music and the sayings were so powerful, just in those short things, like, you know, um, how do we make mistakes without losing self-respect? Just little sayings that meant so much to me, and just looking at life a little differently. Didn't have to say a whole lot. So I really valued that. And I valued him both as a sharer of NVC and also just as a human being. Just so much life. And I am really into the Enneagram as well. And so I asked him if he'd be willing to take the Enneagram test. And he was. So he connected with a 6 on the Enneagram, which I translated into NVC needs, which is about safety and security. And it helped me understand why when I drive him, sometimes he'd be like white knuckling, like he was driving. And I said, Marshall, but I'm not that bad of a driver. Like, why are you doing that? So I got a sense of that, and which amazes me even more, that he was willing to go into all these difficult places, like Chris had said, and places that were not, that were violent and that were scary. So he really pushed himself in a way that I don't imagine most people are willing to do. So something about stepping out of his comfort zone and really just being alive with those quality of connection that he had for himself and connected with others around.
Really challenging himself. Thank you. Farah.
Oh, yes. What more can I say? I think what I'm capturing and inspired by when I think of when I hear everything that you said and we shared, and what he also used to say is, remember these trying to express yourself and make a request in less than 40 words, something like that, because the brain doesn't capture more than 40 words. I'm like, from now on, I would start my sentence. I would like to share. I would like to express myself and share NVC as simply as possible. And anything that gets complicated, I just remind myself that it's taking me off track. Maybe I'm talking about NVC, maybe I'm talking on something, but I'm less closer to the essence. So it's something like that. I'm really wanting our future generation. I'm talking like a nanny maybe, but still, I'm really wanting. I think I'm still a certified trainer, and I want to stay an assessor just for that. This is so much what it's all about. All the rest is around, noise kind of. I mean, interesting, but still noise for me. Thank you so much for offering
really
this.
taking back is just the essence of NVC. And thank you all of you for inspiring us, really going back with buckets of inspiration and wanting to go forward. And there may be a couple of, sorry, Farah?
I just wanted to say, sorry, I interrupted you, but thank you for the questions. It really made me get connected. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Just want you to stay on in case there are any questions from any of our participants here, if they want to say something. Is there anything we have in the chat?
I think there was one question early on which they asked if it was not called nonviolent communication, and maybe Alan, you could speak to that. What was it called in the early days?
Well, I went through several names. The one just preceding nonviolent communication was nonviolent persuasion.
Oh.
And that got such horrible feedback that he gave that up. But the first workshop that I went to him went to was called how to speak to get what you want for reasons you won't be sorry about later.
Oh, wow.
And another one was called Heart Talk. And when people would organize at the beginning, they would create names for it. So there were a lot of name changes there. He didn't know what to call it. Sylvia, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say compassionate communication was another one that I often heard.
Yeah.
And because people would really have difficulty with the name nonviolent. I'm not violent. Why do I need this? So there was also that struggle. But people didn't understand kind of the Gandhi-esque connection to the nonviolence.
That's quite a common question in workshops, but I am not violent. Why do I need to learn nonviolent communication?
But then he had a great response to that, I thought, too, because if you shame, blame, criticize, or are silent when feelings are stirred, we consider that violent.
Thank you for sharing that. Helps.
One other name that comes to me, actually, it was even before the first workshop. It was called responsible thinking and communicating.
Wow. Are there any other questions? Pallavi, Purva, were there any other questions in the...
None that I saw.
Yeah.
I think we're also running out of time.
There is one question I see that has come up, and yes, we close. It says, what were Marshall's views about NVC certification?
On the long version or the short one?
Tova has it. Yeah.
He really didn't want certification. It was us, the trainers, who wanted certification. He didn't want an organization, but he didn't know how to move on without some kind of organization. Very short answer.
That sounds very much like him. Yeah. Okay, so sorry, Marianne, go ahead.
Thank you, Tove. It was less than 40 words.
My specialty.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that changed too. In my first workshops with him, it was 25 words or less. And then about 3 years later, it changed to 40 words or less.
That's because you were there, Alan.
And my husband would correct the English and say it's 40 words or fewer.
And Eva Rambala, his partners for several years, she said, in 1 word or less.
One word. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us. It was very
Thank you,
rich.
everyone, because thank you for the richness, and we will carry it in our hearts for a very long, long, long time. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand it over to Sudha now for the closing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Also.
Wow. I mean, this was such a rich session, and my cup is overflowing. And I guess we all are going to stay with the energy of this session for many hours more. So thank you, each one of you. And I just want to say that if this recording will be put on the Nonviolent Communication Trust website, and also if any one of you wishes to become a member of the Nonviolent Communication Trust, Pallavi will put in the link. Please go there and become a member, and you can find all the details there. I also want to say that if you are not a certification candidate, you're welcome to join CNVC as a supporting member. And you will get all the information that you want. And there are several advantages of being a supporting member of this movement that we call the NVC movement. So that link also we are putting in the chat. And yeah, another announcement, the next Circle of Life will be held on the 21st of March, 2026. This is a monthly circle, and we have most of your email ID, so we'll be advertising it, announcing it as much as early as possible. I'm now going to thank each one of you individually, all the speakers. So grateful that you agreed to come and share what has been your experience. And bye-bye to all of you, the rest of you. Thank you so much for being here and listening with so much patience and I think utter fascination. Deeply grateful.